Yo! Thank you so much, everyone. This is crazy. I did not expect so many people will like this series so much, but I'm super grateful. Now I gotta convince all you guys to stay once this is all over. But let's not think about that for now. If this is your first time on the channel, I'm gonna be honest, this is not gonna be the best video to start with because, oh boy. But just in case you are not deterred, we're making a Hatsune Miku design for each element and region of Genshin Impact. In the spirit of gacha, we're choosing the region, element, and weapon at random and creating a splash art of the final design. With the explanations out of the way, it's time for the gachapon to give us our prompts. And for this Miku, our prompts are Anemo, Natlan, and Sword. Natlan is, at the time of the video, Genshin's latest region to be released. It takes inspiration from Latin America, specifically from Aztec culture, as well as various cultures from and around the Americas. It's the nation of Pyro, War, and Dragons. This video is going to be a bit different from the other ones. I think I've very briefly mentioned this in the Geo Miku video, but all of these Miku designs are fairly old, as in they predate Natlan by several months. For most designs besides maybe the Schneidznayan one, this wasn't really a problem, but as you can surmise from the current situation, this became tricky for Natlan Miku, and I did end up reworking her completely. So, for this video, I will first present her old design and then transition to her current iteration. Before Natlan's release, we had very little actual information about the nation. For the character inspiration, most of what we had came from the Genshin manga, with Vanessa, the original creator of the Knights of Favonius in Mondstadt. She was once a slave from Natlan along with other members of her tribe. The next source of inspiration was the Travail trailer, which presented all the chapters of Genshin's story. Natlan's chapter showed an early design of Yansan alongside this sick beat.
The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash. When the god of war shares this secret with the traveler, it is because she has her reasons.
Hoyoverse! Please put this in the game! Why is it not in the game yet? I've been waiting for 4 years to hear it in game! The music did clue us in that Natlan was definitely going to be inspired by Latin America, so that did help a bit. I totally gambled on whether it would be inspired by Aztec or Mayan culture, and luckily for me, I chose correctly. Since I hadn't made a dancer Miku yet, I decided Natlan would be the perfect nation for it. So I used conchero dancers as inspiration. The conchero dance, also known as Aztec dance, is a dance that dates back to pre-Hispanic times. It's a ceremonial dance that aims to communicate with divinities, and it has evolved to reference various indigenous cultures and incorporate elements of Christianity. Dancers have intricate regalia, often incorporating Aztec-inspired clothing. I wanted to make a design that would feel authentic and respectful, so I did a lot of research, gathering a ton of reference images, brushing up my rusty Spanish skills, and reading through a lot of articles. The first few sketches were basic explorations. Also, please ignore the crossed-off tender at the top. I messed up when writing down the elements and mixed Anemo and Dedra Miku at first. When I landed on a design I liked, I spent a while figuring out the look and colors for her outfit and hair. I did a quick turnaround of the design, something I always make sure to do before I start working on the splash art. Because of the lack of info on Natlan, I chose to only work on the splash art and didn't flesh out the character or her kit in the slightest. I wanted to reference the spiritual aspect of concheros and made it so she'd summon a spirit for her ultimate. Being that she was an animal character, I immediately thought the spirit should be a bird. I settled on the resplendent quetzal, a bird found in the tropical forests of Central America. Here's the first version of Anemo Miku's splash art. how lovely. Now all I had to do was wait for Natlan, and hopefully there would be very little to change about her design.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device in which suggestions or warnings about events to come are dropped or planted.
So it turns out, Natlan was actually very different from what I think anyone expected in terms of character designs. While taking inspiration from Aztec and Latin American cultures, Natlan characters dress in ways that are far closer to 21st century fashion than the rest of Teyvat. They're also separated into tribes based on a Saurian and element. For example, the children of Echoes are the Geo tribe and are represented by the Tepletlosaurus. When Natlan was first released, we were only privy to the Geo, Dendro, and Hydro tribes, so I figured I'd wait a little longer to see what the Anemo tribe was like so I could rework my Miku.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
There was no Anemo tribe. The Anemo tribe doesn't exist anymore. I got baited by Chaska being Anemo. I hate you, Chaska. After this crushing defeat, I decided, you know what, I'll just start doodling a more modernized design for her. I noticed that a lot of the feather ornaments tended to be more understated, so I severely reduced the size of the ones she had at the back of her head. I did want to keep the silhouette of her outfit fairly similar, switching out more traditional aspects of the outfit for modern clothing. Once I had the general idea of the design down, I did a few color variants. Since the Conchelo dance is linked to religion and rituals, I opted to make her a part of the Cryo tribe, the Masters of the Night Winds, since they're the tribe associated with shamans and rituals. But after a bit of thought, I ended up switching to another tribe, mostly because I didn't feel like the Cryo tribe quite fit with what I had in mind for her gameplay. So I decided to put her in the tribe based on what I wanted her kit to look like, rather than her real-life inspiration, and thus she followed Chaska's lead, "You are not forgiven," and became a member of the Flower Feather clan, aka the Pyro tribe. For her splash art, I wanted to keep her a spirit bird, but because of how Natlan characters work, I decided that rather than representing her burst, I'd represent her elemental skill. For those who aren't super familiar with Natlan, playable characters usually have an elemental skill based on movement. They enter a state called Night Soul, which makes them go all glowy, but also summons a creature or object that allows them to move around quicker. In this state, their normal attacks usually change to align with whatever transportation mode they summon and become elemental attacks. There are exceptions, but for the most part, that's how they work basically. So with that in mind, her Quetzal summon would also work as her quote-unquote mode of transportation. I already decided I was going to keep the Quetzal the same, so I simply copied it into the new file and started drawing. This is actually the second iteration of the splash art. I was going to use the same pose as the old version, but I felt like it hid a lot of her outfit and it didn't quite look the way I imagined her summoning her bird, so I ended up reworking it completely. I did also rework her design a few times on and off screen, so you'll probably see it change a bit while I talk about her story and personality. Anemo Miku is open and cheerful with a passion for dance and a great respect for rituals and traditions. She used to dance a lot to entertain and cheer up her friends and family when she was younger, but as she grew older, she found that dance could have a lot more meaning. Because Conchelo dancers are usually groups of people, I thought it would be interesting if she was part of a group where each member came from a different tribe, with their leader being from the Masters of the Night Winds tribe. The story behind the whole thing being that said leader was trying to incorporate dances into their rituals and recruited different people to help. Miku, having some experience in dance, helped create the dance steps, and she and her group performed for certain ceremonies. I felt like it was a nice way of incorporating the original inspiration into Genshin's pre-existing lore. And here's our Miku. For her normal attacks, she performs 3 consecutive strikes with her sword. For her elemental skill, Anemo Miku enters the Night Soul state, summoning Pako, a spirit woven into her skirt. Once summoned, Pako allows her to soar into the sky. He can fly both leisurely and at great speed, so long as Miku is in her Night Soul state. She can also use him in battle, launching him at opponents and dealing anemo damage. For her burst, she soars high up into the sky before falling back down and delivering a devastating kick alongside Paco's plunge attack, dealing a large amount of anemo damage to any enemies in her field of attack. Anemo Miku is a dancer from the Flower Feather clan. She is part of a group, all from different tribes, who dance for rituals and ceremonies. She is very passionate about dancing and finds a lot of meaning through it. She is cheerful and optimistic, always finding ways of celebrating the good, even in terrible situations. And there we go. This was a huge undertaking. I promise the next Miku video will not be this long. I do want to showcase the small turnaround I did for her, since it features her normal mode and Night Soul state. I briefly mentioned Paco coming from her skirt, so I kinda wanna show what I meant. He is at the back here when she's in her regular state, but once summoned, he flies out and leaves just a few feathers behind. I did struggle quite a bit with Natlan Miku, but she was still super fun. I do hope my reference to Concheros was done respectfully. Her design shifted quite a bit from it to fit more with Natlan's aesthetic. I had a bunch of things I wanted to say about her regarding her anemo vision and what made her view on dance shift, but I think it's more fun to let people come up with their own ideas. I think it'll be more interesting than anything I could come up with. And please don't hesitate to give your thoughts on this design. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys think about these. Thank you to everyone who made it this far despite the elongated runtime. I hope you enjoyed the accidental 1K special. The next and last design will be Dendro Miku from Fontaine. So weird to think this series is almost done. Anyway, if you don't want to miss the very last Miku design, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified once I post the next video. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye bye!